Each Hadassah event has its own mystique, it creates its own ambience, and builds upon its own history. This will be the 14th time that we have gathered together to pay well-merited tribute to the winner of the Harold U. Ribalow Prize. This is an annual fiction award presented for an outstanding English language work of fiction on a Jewish theme by an author deserving of such recognition. The Hadassah magazine family is proud to relate itself to the Ribalow family by administering the awarding of this distinguished prize. The Hadassah magazine and Hadassah, the Women's Organization of America, extend a warm welcome to the many special guests who have joined our Hadassah colleagues in order to pay their respects to Benjamin Taylor, the honoree, or to Mayor Ribalow, or to the Hadassah magazine and its outstanding editor, Alan Tegay. We are greatly privileged to greet former winners of the Ribalow Prize, Louis Begley, who is sitting on the platform and from whom you will hear just a bit later, Lynn Sharon Schwartz, the 1990 winner, and I've been told that Laura Siegel, the winner in 1986, is in the room. Is she or isn't she? Well, those who are in the room, let's give them a round of applause. I want to call your attention to that the winning book covers are on display all around the room, so you'll find 14 of them if we have added. Yes, there's the 14th. And please take a look at them before you have a very delicious lunch. At this time, I am very pleased to introduce those on the dais simply by title. On this far left, my far left, is Rabbi Judah Nadich, Rabbi Emeritus of the Park Avenue Synagogue, my rabbi, and his wife, wonderful Hadassah Nadich. Alan Tegay, the executive editor of the magazine. My name is Bernice Tannenbaum. I'm a former president, but I am the chair of the magazine, and I'm very happy in that task. Marlene Post, the president of Hadassah magazine. Excuse me. No. Well, I was bound to make a boo-boo. Okay, the president of Hadassah, Louis Begley, whom I introduced before, Benjamin Taylor, our 1996 award winner, sitting next to him, Mayor Ribalow, playwright, novelist, critic, Beth Wogelunter, his perpetual partner, sitting on the dais, the executive director of Hadassah. Let me introduce Marlene Post, our distinguished president, by saying, "Welcome home, Marlene." There was once a video that was called "Welcome Home, Kata." We continually say this to Marlene. Marlene is barely off the plane from Israel, but that is what we consider a normal state of affairs. Hardworking, far-seeing, multi-talented are some of the words that come to mind when describing Marlene. No task is too big and no challenge too overwhelming for her. With determination and vision, she tackles them all. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Marlene to this distinguished audience.
It is my privilege to welcome all of you to Hadassah's annual tribute to literature. When the Russian writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn gave his Nobel lecture in 1972, he said then that literature is the living memory of a nation. He probably didn't think he was making a Zionist statement, but I think he was. One of the things that defined us as a nation for all the generations before Israel's birth in 1948 was our own literature. From our sacred writings to the poetry of Spain in the Golden Age, from Yiddish literature to the American Jewish novels that are so much a part of both American and Jewish culture, we have always possessed the living memory that Solzhenitsyn spoke about. It was certainly no accident that Theodor Herzl, the man who gave form to the Jewish quest for nationhood, came from the world of literature. Hadassah has its roots in literature as well. We started as Henrietta Zoll's study group, and we grew because of a visionary generation that realized that literature was an integral part of a much larger cultural and national life of our people. So it was entirely fitting that the family of Howard U. Ribalow, when it went looking for a home for a prize in his memory, came to Hadassah. And it is also quite in keeping with our tradition that the award ceremony has become truly one of the highlights of our Hadassah calendar. Indeed, the relationship between the prize and Hadassah magazine, though it goes back only 13 years of our 85 years as Hadassah, is now so familiar a part of our landscape that it is hard to remember a time when we did not all look forward to this event. In the years since the prize was first given, our winners have taken us to many destinations on the Jewish map and into many cultures where Jews have contributed their energies. We have been to Argentina and to India, to Poland and to Israel. We have had several tours of a place called Brooklyn. Let's hear it for Brooklyn. And this year, we found ourselves, thanks to Benjamin Taylor, in a rich and lyrical Texas that no movie, no Hollywood movie has ever taken us to. The writers we have honored in the past have been a fascinating collection of guides to our consciousness as a people. Some have painted portraits with laughter, others with tragedy. Some have dug intimately into their Jewish souls, and a few have been non-Jews who entered the Jewish world and left us better informed about ourselves. All in all, the Ribalow Prize has become, in my opinion, and I think in your opinions, a wonderful institution that has recognized literary talent and at the same time enriched the magazine and the Ribalow family. I am personally honored to salute the Ribalow family today. I do this each year, and I do it with love in my heart for you as the representative, and to thank the family for the many, many years of collaboration and for those many years in front of us. On behalf of all Hadassah, I congratulate you, Mr. Taylor, for telling tales out of school. It started out as your voice, but now it is truly a part of our memory, a part of literary memory, and we thank you as well. I welcome all of you to our Hadassah home here today. I thank you for joining us. I thank you for honoring Mr. Taylor by your presence, and I know that in this room are many geniuses. You will hear about them later, but I truly honor all of you and thank you for being with us today.
For the next moment, I'm going to boast. The Hadassah magazine is the largest Jewish publication in the world and is also a magazine that regularly receives rewards for its editorial excellence, production, and graphic design. Such a person needs a remarkable person to serve as its executive director, and it has such a person, and his name is Alan Teagay. I first met Alan many years ago when he was the editor-in-chief of the Near East Report, the publication of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, of which I was an officer. Those 4 days, those 4 pages that used to come out of the Near East Report and still come out of it, provided the weekly Bible for the pro-Israel community. Without that, we could go no place to speak. We could write no articles. We needed that to guide us. And he handled that role magnificently and highly professionally, just as he handles his different role today. He and his talented staff put out a praiseworthy magazine about Jewish life that reads well, looks good, and keeps our vast membership very happy in accordance with the letters we receive on a daily basis. Most of them love us. One or two have a problem with us. I would like to ask the staff of the magazine to stand up for a moment so they can get your applause. Come on, sit up, stand up. And I'm going to do something that hasn't been done before. I'm going to ask all former chairs of the magazine who have had an influence on this wonderful magazine to stand up as well. And now it is with great pleasure that I introduce the genius I just spoke about. He's not budding genius, he's already one, Alan Tigay.
Thank you, Bernice. A book is a success if readers can put themselves into it. As Marlene pointed out, the books that qualify as Jewish literature are those that we can fit into our personal and cultural memories. The best writers, the kind we seek to honor, not only write compelling stories, they also fill them with the details that help us step into the pages. Solzhenitsyn, to use the same example, gave us lessons in tyranny, but those lessons wouldn't have been as strong had he not also taken us with him for a day into the Gulag with Ivan Denisovich. And without ever leaving home, many of us have likewise walked Baker Street with Arthur Conan Doyle or argued Talmud and Zionist politics with Chaim Potok's Williamsburg. Aside from agreeing wholeheartedly with the choice of this year's Ribalow winner, I have to say that there are things in Benjamin Taylor's book, details that I looked for without even knowing, that I have found nowhere else. Tales Out of School is set in Galveston, Texas, at a time when Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe were coming through the town to the challenge and sometimes the chagrin of the established German Jewish burghers. It was also in Galveston, on a September day 84 years ago, that my grandfather stepped off the SS Cologne and onto the ground of the Golden Medina. My grandfather spent only a week in Texas before heading east, and my own personal experience with Galveston is an afternoon spent in the genealogical section of the Rosenberg Library searching unsuccessfully for a record of Abraham Tigay's arrival. But even if I had found a piece of paper with his name on it, I could not possibly have filled in the blanks of detail and imagination that I found in Tales Out of School. It has the streets my grandfather might have walked, the air he might have breathed. It's a story of one family, but it's also a part of a chapter in Jewish history, a great encounter between the elite and the new masses. And for me, it took a simple black and white photo of my family's past and filled in the background in living color. For this, I offer Mr. Taylor not only congratulations, but thanks. The Ribalow Prize, endowed by the family of Harold U. Ribalow and administered by Hadassah Magazine, is, as Bernice pointed out, given each year to a writer deserving of recognition for a work of fiction on a Jewish theme. In keeping with the tradition of the prize, an excerpt from Tales Out of School appears in the current issue of Hadassah Magazine. In addition to Mr. Taylor's book, which was published by Turtle Point Press, the nominees for the 1996 Harold U. Ribalow Prize were The Hiding Room by Jonathan Wilson, published by Viking, and Mrs. Ted Bliss by Stanley Elkin, published by Hyperion. As in previous years, eligible books were screened by the Ribalow family and the Hadassah Magazine staff. The nominated books were then sent to an independent panel of judges. The judges for this year's prize were Elie Wiesel, Thomas Keneally, and last year's Ribalow Prize winner, Magda Bogan. I'd like to point out with appreciation that Thomas Keneally has served on the judges panel for 3 years and Elie Wiesel for 10. On behalf of Hadassah Magazine, I thank the judges for their work and for their dedication. At this event last year, I observed that the Ribalow recipients have given us many characters with special powers of perception. There was the wayward eye of Lynn Sharon Schwartz's heroine in Leaving Brooklyn, Sandra Shore's optometrist in the great letter E, who fancied himself the heir of Spinoza as both a philosopher and a lens grinder. There was Magda Bogan's crystal ball in Natalia, God's Messenger. And there were the uncanny powers of discernment that allowed Louis Begley's characters, indeed Louis Begley himself, to survive the Holocaust in Wartime Lies. It's a pleasure to welcome Louis Begley, who won the Ribalow Prize in 1992, as today's keynote speaker. Those of us connected with the prize have come to think of our circle as a family. We take pride in the accomplishments of Ribalow recipients, and we are especially pleased with return engagements. For all of us here, Louis, it's like welcoming you home for Hanukkah. I want to talk about you a little bit. Louis Begley was born in Poland and arrived in the United States in 1947, and just 7 years later graduated summa cum laude from Harvard. After serving in the United States Army, he graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School. He joined the law firm of Debevoise and Plimpton in 1959 and has been there ever since. He became a partner in 1968 and is currently chairman of the firm's international practice. Wartime Lies was his first novel. There have been 3 more since then. The most recent, called About Schmidt, was published in September. He also served as president of the PEN American Center from 1993 to 1995. I should point out that the Ribalow Prize was by no means the first or the last that he has earned for his writing. He was a National Book Award finalist and also received the American Academy of Letters Award in Literature and the PEN Ernest Hemingway Foundation Award. His books also translate well. In addition to the Irish Times Aer Lingus International Fiction Prize, he has received, among others, France's Prix Médicis Étranger and Germany's Bremerhavener Bürgerpreis. We like the Ribalow recipients to feel that they are in good company, but clearly in this case, it is the Ribalow Prize that is in good company as well. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Louis Begley.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a notorious mumbler, so if you can't hear me, do something about it. Don't suffer in silence. It's to congratulate Ben Taylor on winning for his first novel, Tales Out of School. The really very splendid Ribalow Prize is, of course, a very great honor, but it's very moving for me personally. Ben is a friend. My wife and I met him in eastern Long Island, where he spent a part of the year sometime before the publication of Tales Out of School, and where he is now more firmly established, so that we had the added excitement of reading his beautiful novel in proof. And from the moment of our first meeting and our first intense conversation on the porch of a house surrounded by scrub oak and pine that belongs to a friend who has been close to us and very special in our lives for many years and had been inspired to introduce us, I realized that I was in the presence of a luminously gifted, very learned, and eerily sensitive young man. This was before I had learnt that Ben Taylor is a writer, that he had obtained a doctorate in English and comparative literature from Columbia University, that he had indeed taught at Columbia and the New School for Social Research, and that he was then teaching literature at Washington University in St. Louis. Time passes and he is now a writer in residence at that university, which is quite fitting. The other reason for my emotion is that it is a homecoming for me. I was immensely grateful for the Ribalow Prize, and I have not forgotten the warmth with which I was welcomed by the Ribalow family, by Alan Tigay, and everyone else connected with the prize, and I have not stopped being grateful for the generous reception of my book. Ben Taylor has in fact written another brilliant book, in addition to Tales Out of School. It consists of essays on genius and modernity, which take as their points of departure the very different visions of Walter Pater, Paul Valéry, and Sigmund Freud, an unusual conjunction. This work was published by the New York University Press under the title Into the Open. Tales Out of School and Into the Open appeared in the same year, 1995, which says a great deal about the energy and productivity of this laureate. The laureate is also a distinguished critic and a book reviewer, and he is working on a new novel, he has confessed to me. But a first novel, a first collection of poems, or a first play are entitled to a special place of honor and have to be treated with particular tenderness and respect. This is because if they are serious work, like Tales Out of School, they represent an extraordinarily gallant act of faith on the part of the author. Faith in the integrity of the work presented to the public, faith that among the readers there will be found the happy few who are able to respond with immediate sympathy to what one has written, faith in one's capacity to withstand exposure to the eyes of strangers. To publish such a work, I think, is rather like undertaking after some bet that one has forgotten to stand naked in Times Square during the lunch hour, and faith in one's having what it takes to continue and thus make good on the implicit promise to one's readers that there is more to come. Novels one writes later are just as important, and sometimes one may like them better, but in the meantime one's skin has become less tender. What a cause of joy it is then to find that a first novel is as beautiful, as perfect in its genre as Ben Taylor's firstling. Tales Out of School takes its place in the great tradition of the Bildungsroman, the story of the awakening of the artist. Lost my place. At the close of the novel, the 14-year-old Felix Memel has seen his family circle shattered, as the marvelously drawn family retainer Niva puts it, "It ain't no home left here," and is living with the lady who has been tutoring him in Latin and the woman who is the Latin teacher's lover, somewhat as though he had put himself in the care of a wise centaur. But his real anchor to windward is a book, the Aeneid. In it he reads that happy, the Latin word of course is Felix, is the man who can learn the causes of things, and copies that sentence, homage from P. Virgilius to F. Memel across the chasm of centuries, he asks himself, and answers his own question with a gloriously self-assured, evidently so. We can trust the boy as we can trust Ben Taylor. Whatever travails may await him, words will not abandon him, and he will not abandon them or the search for the hidden springs of events. Edward Albee has called Tales Out of School a magical and mysterious work, and that great poet and stylist Richard Howard has rightly singled for praise Ben Taylor's singularly enchanting style, as well as his gift for teasing the reader by complications in the storyline that he later resolves as though with a conjurer's trick. Tales Out of School, he wrote, is a tale of the tribe, as enmeshed with harebrained circumstances as it is with heretical myth. Classical resonance, I learned from this affectionate affabulation, has nothing to do with the grand scale. It is the grand style that works the mystery and the mischief. What a lovable, brilliant recital. You will be right, I think, if you take this example of Mr. Howard's pyrotechnics to be a virtuoso's response to a bravura performance by an astonishing younger colleague. Why is Ben Taylor's book, as Richard Howard suggests, The Tale of the Tribe? That has already been answered by my predecessors, because the Memels are a Jewish family settled in this most unlikely place, I suppose, for Jews at the end of the 19th century. The book is placed in the great tradition of American literature that is also Jewish American literature. And it illustrates, I think, something quite marvelous about Galveston. The Memels become very rich, brewing a lager that is better than anyone in that part of the world had drunk before. Just expertly, they play chamber music in their comfortable house. They bring up 2 sons. They sink roots in the alien and threatening Texas soils. Just as the family's fortune would seem to be at the zenith, plagues are visited on it. The older son contracts syphilis, then he drowns in the great storm that strikes Galveston. The younger brother is incapable of carrying on the family business, and over a short span of the years, the house of Memel crumbles. I have said that the Memels sink their roots in Galveston. That enables Ben Taylor to locate his tale in yet another grand tradition, that of the Southern novel, redolent of summer ease and danger, rich in descriptions of nature, peopled by eccentrics who somehow do not find their homologues in Maine or Vermont, or on the upper west side of Manhattan. I believe that the Southern tradition of storytelling has also contributed beautifully to the suppleness of Ben Taylor's narrative technique. After the catastrophe of the twin plagues, syphilis and the flood, the Jewish theme of the novel weaves in and out of the story very intricately, never quite disappearing. Like Aeneas, Felix searches for a lost father, but he does not do so really by connecting with the Jewish tradition of the family. His quest is into the unconscious. It's a descent into the realm beyond Acheron in search for the aged Anchises, which so fascinates the boy, which is his metaphor. Felix's golden bough will be self-knowledge and the liberation only it can bring. Summarizing a novel, particularly a novel as elegant and delicate as Ben Taylor's, and that's a favorite blood sport of reviewers, brings one close to killing it. I won't summarize it further. I'm sorry that there will be no reading here from Ben's novel, but perhaps that will encourage you to rush and read it yourselves, and I think that you will find great joy in it.
Mayor Ribalow deserves a prize for devotion for each of the last 13 years. I guess today would be the 14th. It's been a pleasure to watch and learn from his dedication as a son and his dedication to Jewish literature. Despite a career that is uniquely his own, Meir has walked proudly in the footsteps of his father Harold, the writer and editor, and his grandfather Menachem, an essayist and literary critic who was editor of the first Hebrew newspaper in the United States. Meir's plays have been produced 130 times in half a dozen countries. He has composed poetry and music lyrics and written nonfiction books and articles on subjects ranging from theater and film to baseball and chess. He has directed plays in New York and London and was Joseph Papp's production associate at the New York Shakespeare Festival. In February, he will be directing a new play by Scott Momaday at the Kennedy Center in Washington. It's a pleasure to introduce my friend, teacher, and partner, Mayor Ribalow.
Actually, of all the people here today, I may be the least deserving of a prize in the sense that I've been given one since birth, through no desert of my own, by the parents that I have and the family into which I was born. I guess I always knew the value of my father as a person and as a father and in his professional capacity, but it took me a long time to realize how rare that was. I knew that it was beyond price, but I naively thought when I was younger that there was more of that around than there is, and learned otherwise. I don't know what I could really do to justify the glowing warmth of Marlene's introduction and all the kind words that have been said, but before giving Benjamin the formal presentation of this award, I'd like to say just a couple of things about why there's a prize named after Harold Ribalow as opposed to the many other people after whom it could be named. Marlene made a comment about the relevance of the centrality of literature to civilization, and it reminded me of an eloquent comment that I heard recently at an address at the Harvard Club by Edward Albee, who mentioned that without the culture and, of course, literature, our society is no more than informed barbarians. I have a friend who's a very gifted writer, but whose faith and confidence occasionally flags. Though she's had several fine stories published recently, it's all too easy for her to feel, as she puts it, like a loser. Speaking with her on the phone the other night, I couldn't help thinking how true it is that a little support goes a very long way with struggling artists. A fleeting phrase of praise, an acknowledgement from a reader that he or she knows what you mean, even the briefest of positive responses, the assurance that your work has struck a chord in another human being, can be profoundly important to your entire career, even to your life itself. Every writer needs a reader, and a respected critic who affirms the intrinsic value of one's work can provide a fire whose flame never goes out, never ceases to warm a writer's soul, even in the most icy of spiritual frosts. Every hopeful, yearning writer needs a Harold U. Ribalow at some point in his or her life. My father, in whose memory this prize is given, was a most remarkable fellow. For those of you who do not know him or of him, the basic facts are impressive enough. He wrote or edited 18 books, wide-ranging in scope, about boxing, military heroes, stamps, sociology, baseball, ancient books, chess, British playwrights, sports, and several collected anthologies of Anglo-American Jewish literature. And that doesn't include any number of subjects that fascinated him. All kinds of literature and music, American politics, British history, Japanese culture. With my dad, it was hard to find a subject he could not discuss with knowledge and passion. All of this was in his spare time, since he worked full-time as director of publicity for Israel Bonds. He also wrote hundreds of articles and book reviews, and was a photographer, a sports reporter, and read a book every day. Kept him off the streets. He was loved not with unqualified depth, not only by his wife, but also by his sister Hadassah Nadich, who was and is as devoted to her brother as he was and we are devoted to her. His children adored him, and not without reason. He always felt and said that being our father didn't automatically entitle him to our love or even any fealty. Whatever respect he received, he figured he should earn from his kids as from anyone else. The reason it's particularly appropriate that a prize like this should be given in his name is that his greatest pleasure came from discovering and promoting writers he considered gifted. He not only got a tremendous thrill out of spotting literary talent, he got, and therefore gave, enormous pleasure out of sharing his discoveries with anyone interested. Since I was lucky enough to be around a lot of the time, I often received the benefits of these bursts of enthusiasm. He'd stand in the doorway and say, "Got a minute?" Ask gleefully, looking like a kid who's just found a freezer full of ice cream. "Listen to this." Then he'd read some striking sentence or passage, say, "Terrific, terrific," and explain what the book was about, the author's style and subject, and whom he or she was. Whatever there was to know about them, he'd know within a day or two. And if he found an author particularly interesting, he would in short order have read anything and everything written by or about them. The names of those whose abilities he discerned earlier than most, and whose writing he promoted with enthusiasm more characteristic of an agent or a parent than a literary critic, today reads like an honor roll of Anglo-American Jewish literature. Saul Bellow, Bashevis Singer, Elie Wiesel, all later Nobel laureates, Bernard Malamud, who should have been one, Cynthia Ozick, Chaim Grada, Chaim Potok, Irwin Shaw, Arnold Wesker, Susan Fromberg Schaefer, Grace Paley. The career of Henry Roth, and specifically the rediscovery of Call It Sleep, would never have occurred as it did without my dad's unflagging and selfless efforts. The list could go on and on. If I sound prejudiced, it's because I am. But if I am, it's because I have every reason to be. I know the man was my father, but he really was that terrific. I may be biased, but I'm not wrong. Still, despite all his professional and personal accomplishments, my dad would have been utterly disbelieving if someone had told him that a prize would be established in his name, administered by Hadassah magazine, that would become one of the most notable literary awards in the world of Anglo-American, Anglo-English Jewish fiction. He was modest to a fault, so admiring of other people's talent that he was dismissive of his own. And he did have a genius, not so much for writing and anthologizing and recognizing talent, though he had a great gift for that, but for his extraordinary ability to live fully, regard everything he came across with enthusiasm and an open-minded fairness, and his astounding generosity in promoting the work of others. My father did not live as though he himself were important. He was consumed with the excitement of finding writers whose talent needed, he felt, to be nurtured. If we could tell him about the Ribalow Prize, he would immediately start naming all the writers who deserved the honor more than he did. But in truth, no one deserves it as much. It is with great pleasure that I present Benjamin Taylor the 1996 Ribalow Prize for Tales Out of School.
Thank you. Mr. Ribalow, Rabbi, and Mrs. Nadich, Mrs. Tannenbaum, Mrs. Post, Mr. T. Gay, Mr. Begley, friends and guests. A glance at the record of Ribalow winners and my heart is in my throat. This prize has been scrupulously bestowed. The works chosen have tended to take their place in the lasting ranks of literature. That my book is today added to such an honor roll moves me more than I can say. Thinking back to the month Tales Out of School was published, October of last year, I cherish one memory in particular. I boarded the Hampton Jitney at 41st between Lex and 3rd. A moment later, a lion got on, came down the aisle, took the seat across from mine. We chatted a bit, swapped newspapers, snacked, dozed, chatted. He drew me out the way nice lions do, then hit me with his parting shot. "You're publishing your first novel? Don't expect much, kid." I told him the privilege was to have done the work and blah, 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 and was lying through my teeth. For what I really had in mind was to burn up the bestseller list, have Hollywood be the path to my door, maybe even win a prize or something. Plus one other thing, little thing, which was to make my soul, as the poets say. Writing is tearfully hard work. Hard because there have already been such wizardly soul makers that you wonder what they can have left undone. It is because we have had such great writers, Hemingway says, that a writer is driven far out past where he can go, out to where no one can help him. What can Hawthorne, Melville, James, Wharton, and Cather, Faulkner, Cheever, Maxwell, O'Connor, Bellow, and Roth, just to name a homegrown pantheon, what can they have left undone? Answer is, for you, everything. Your soul is yours alone to make out where no one else can help you. Literature is new music on an old instrument, fragile by no means, indeed perhaps indestructible, handed on and on, yours to try for the time of your life. The best allegory of this, I know, is Chekhov's, who likens literature to a fiddle. Indulge me while I tell the story, it's quickly done. The coffin maker, Yakov Ivanov, a Jew-hater, inhabits a village where everybody is anti-Semitic, where indeed even the dogs and the cats are anti-Semites. The townsfolk here being vigorous and long-lived, as mean people are. Yakov's coffin-making business has languished. He must make ends meet by, of all things, playing the fiddle in a Jewish band. Life goes from bad to worse. His pitiful wife, long abused by him, sickens and dies, and from the making of that coffin, Yakov can earn no fee. Now, this no-goodnik gives himself up to new thoughts. Why is the order of the world so strange, he asks himself, that life, which is given to a man only once, should pass away without benefit? And with that, standing in his doorway, Yakov takes up the instrument and plays as never before, ravishingly. Along comes a little Jew. Always, you will have noticed, it's a little Jew who comes along, never a big one. Rothschild, everyone calls the beggar, big joke, a flutist from the Jewish band and Yakov's particular punching bag. Along comes Rothschild, and here's Yakov, his tormentor, playing the transformingly beautiful song of all humankind's sorrows and regrets. Yakov, that rich Mr. Shapovalov, is marrying his daughter to a fine young man. We stand to make some money, Yakov, but it's not to be. Yakov will not play at that wedding or any other ever again. He goes into his hovel to lie down, for he is ill, mortally so. And when the priest comes to confess him, as presently he does, Yakov remembers each of his sins, remembers the unhappy face of his wife, remembers the despairing shriek of a Jew bitten by a dog, and whispers to the priest, "Give my fiddle to Rothschild." Chekhov rounds off the story this way. Nowadays, everyone in town wants to know where Rothschild got such a fiddle, Did he buy it? Did he steal it? Or did someone leave it with him as a pledge? When he plays the song that Yakov in his doorway had played, the outcome is sad, and all who hear it weep. So popular is this new song that merchants and officials are forever asking poor Rothschild to their houses and demanding that he play it for them a dozen or more times. Literature is about trouble, this trouble we're in. It bears us bad tidings, yet makes us rejoice, since it's also about the abundance of our opportunity, always there to be recollected. Literature says, here are some things the otherwise foul world includes. The quickness of foxes on a hill, the laughter in women's voices, Orion wheeling up from the horizon, buckling on his belt, the dolphin-like motion of boys in the surf. Oh, what a paradise it seems, a favorite of mine, John Cheever, declared at the end of his life. Seems, yes, but life has thrust all these incandescent marvels into your hands, only to take them back again. Darkness awaits you, darker than you thought darkness could be. And yet. Rothschild's fiddle, left with us as a pledge, left by the great ones who've played it to perfection and beyond, raves on heedless in the night, singing the wonders voluminously strange of our being, the creaturely shocks and surprises, the whole human tale, the great benefice, Cheever called it, of living here and renewing ourselves with love. My deep thanks for the honor accorded today go, first of all, to the family of the late Harold Ribalow. Their generosity has made for me, as for each previous winner, a milestone. I wish also to express my hearty thanks to the editors of Hadassah magazine, who so ably administer the Ribalow Prize, to this year's panel of jurors, Magda Bogan, Thomas Keneally, and Elie Wiesel, who singled out my book from a most distinguished group of finalists, to Louis Begley, a figure as essential in Paris, Berlin, Krakow, and Warsaw as he is among us in New York, and who honors me by his presence and his more than generous praise. To my agent, Peter Mattson, that old campaigner, strong in the fight. To Rob McQuilkin, of whom I have received a second life, or will soon in paperback. And to all those at Warner Books, especially John Ahern, who prepared the softcover edition of Tales Out of School. By words spoken and deeds done, many friends proved instrumental to the book. Let me just mention from a multitude, and in random order, Jeanette Hayne, Richard Howard, Joel Canaro, Edward Albee, Amy Hempel, Francis Kiernan, Leonard Barkin, Lynn Sharon Schwartz, and my colleague Stanley Elkin of blessed memory. Say it was my glory I had such friends. The profoundest gratitude is for last. Without the archangelic goodness of Jonathan Rabinowitz, that valiant and indefatigable and bright-hearted and reckless publisher, my novel would have remained a typescript in a drawer. The palm is his as much as mine. I was the necessary cause, but he the sufficient of Tales Out of School. Wise men warn you about the heart sickness and defeated expectations and general infestivity that come of publishing a first novel. Don't expect much, a lion said to me. Not much, no. I'm merely over the moon. Thank you.
at that. Well, I didn't want to stop the clapping. You responded in the proper way to a brilliant and beautiful presentation. I know you join me in not only congratulating Benjamin Taylor, but looking forward to his next novel very, very quickly. I want to thank Mayor Ribalow for his very thoughtful words, Louis Begley, Alan T. Gay, Marlene Post. I think I started off by saying every event has its own mystique. I think this event has woven its own magical spell upon all of us. I think you also spoke of incandescent moments. I regard the last period of this, when we sat together and thought about American literature, as an incandescent moment in our lives. And one more quote from our recent speaker: literature is new music on an old instrument. I love it. I think it is so beautiful. We will always think of these words as we remember that we were among the first to discover you. And we're going to claim credit for it for a long, long time. And now I just want to make two thank yous. First of all, Helene Carper did this beautiful Hanukkah decorations, and I think we should, it helped in creating a festive air. And I think we should thank Dot Silfen, who will probably kill me for mentioning it, for making the arrangements. And it is now my privilege to invite you to a beautiful and tasteful luncheon, as usual, prepared by our wonderful Mary Blank. Thank you very much. The session is concluded.